Hi, folks. This is Abel James, and welcome to Fat Burning Man, where we talk about real food and real results. On this week's show, we're here with Max Lugavere, who's the director of the upcoming documentary called Breadhead, which explores the effect of diet on brain health. He was the producer and host of Al Gore's Emmy-nominated Current TV and has been featured on NBC Nightly News and in the Wall Street Journal. Don't miss this one. Before we get to the show, I want to encourage you to check out our online community called the Fat Burning Tribe. It's the place where my wife Allison and I answer your questions in monthly Q&As, chat with you in our private Facebook group, share exclusive recipes and workouts, and give you the best of what we've got in the world of health. You can get all of the details at fatburningtribe.com. Go ahead and type it in right now to check it out, fatburningtribe.com. Our members are getting results, so I just want to share a little bit with you. Here's a recent success story from Maria. I finished my 40 days of wild eating while on vacation this past week. I lost about 13 pounds, which is great because I only really needed to rid myself of 20 pounds. My gut fat is almost gone. I feel great. I will be celebrating my 42nd birthday in September. I'm so very pleased with the results. My waist has never been this size. I'm thinking of trying on my wedding dress and knowing it'll be way too big. Rock on, Maria. That's what I'm talking about. One of our other members, Mandy, just shared her results, losing over 100 pounds in the past year. So let me just give you a quick look at some of the cool stuff we're sharing with members of the Fat Burning Tribe this month. There's a question and answer video with me and Allison answering recent questions from members. We've got a 7-minute wild workout video that I made for you guys. We're sharing a 4-part video series on biohacking, a non-GMO survival guide, a new resource on what to avoid and how to choose personal care products and cosmetics without getting all the toxic junk that's in most of them, as well as delicious recipes including baked pesto salmon with roasted artichokes, spicy buffalo chicken, and roasted red pepper mini pizzas, and tons more. So if you join us soon, you can get your first month's membership for just $1, which is less than a cup of coffee. So if you'd like to meet us in person, visit fatburningtribe.com right now and get all the details. One last time, that's fatburningtribe.com. I can't wait to see you there. All right, on to the show with Max Lugavere. We're going to be talking about why 30-somethings and millennials need to get serious about brain health right now, why blood sugar matters more than blood pressure, how to optimize your brain with real food, and much more. All right, let's go hang out with Max. All right, folks, this week we're here with Max Lugavere, who is the director of an upcoming documentary titled Breadhead, which explores the impact of diet and lifestyle on brain health. He's also a musician, so this is going to be a fun interview. Max, what's cooking, man?
Hey, dude, it's great to be here.
We're just going to jam. We're going to jam for like 40 minutes. It's going to be awesome.
Literally, metaphorically, I love it.
So we were talking before this interview about how a lot of people are kind of like crowding into the health space now because it's this hot thing, and there are documentaries, podcasts, videos here, all sorts of things coming at people. But what's rare is true passion and true meaning behind why people are doing this. Because, the marketers know that health is a great business. And that's one of the reasons I got into this, is to go up against them, because I got burned by a bunch of health marketers and did the wrong thing, followed the wrong advice. And I think a lot of people are kind of in that situation. That's why what you're doing right now is so important. So can you talk about why is Breadhead more of a passion project than anything else?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the very real sense, I mean, nobody does a documentary to make money from it.
Right.
Documentaries are always, like, generally without exception, passion projects.
Yeah. They're great at losing money, documentaries.
Great way to lose money. Yeah. I mean, if you want to watch your bank account shrink, doing a documentary is a great thing to do. But no, so my background is in media. I was a filmmaker in college. I actually was double majoring in film and psychology.
Oh, cool.
Before that, I was pre-med, but I ended up switching to a film major because I realized, I guess, a love of storytelling. I ended up getting this dream job as soon as I graduated from college, working for Al Gore, hosting Current TV for 5 years, which was amazing.
So cool.
Dream job. Yeah, so that was incredible. And I learned a lot. You know, I got to work with Peabody Award-winning journalists. I got to work with, just amazing storytellers. And it was really a dream scenario. Um, and then I left to sort of create content unencumbered by the restraints of television. So lots of web stuff. I did a web
Hmm.
series in 2013 called Acting Disruptive. So my, like my toolkit is very much about storytelling, creating content that resonates. And also the kind of content that I've created has always been really, on the one hand to entertain and to inspire, but also to like inform, and I've always been obsessed with science, technology, particularly how technology is sort of augmenting the human condition. I'm a big fan
Hmm.
of Ray Kurzweil, the promise of the singularity, not so much that, we might one day be able to live forever, but in what it promises for things like chronic disease and,
Yeah.
limb replacement. I mean, things like that. It's nanotech and how nanotech can rewrite faulty genes, one day.
Hmm.
So that kind of thing. Um, but unbeknownst to many, I've always been really into health and nutrition. Uh, I was a in high school like a computer programmer, like a self-taught computer programmer, and
Hmm. Sounds familiar.
yeah, like, well, I think that technology has really given rise to a whole new generation of,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, biohackers, people that approach their
Hmm.
own biology uh, and aspects of their own performance with the mental framework of an engineer. And so that's kind of what I
Yeah.
did for as long as I can remember with my own health. I've actually, I've been lucky. I've never been overweight. I've never had to deal with any sort of uh, diabetic issues, anything like that. It was all
Hmm.
very much for me just like this curiosity about how my dietary and lifestyle choices can manifest in my physical being.
Yeah.
But then 3 years ago, shit became for me when
Hmm.
I started noticing signs of cognitive decline in my mom. And as somebody who, obviously loves health and science and nutrition and has this sort of ability to understand the science that I've, been working at for most of my life, um, I was very much mobilized to dig into the research, as you did, in reading, your background. Um, I became just obsessed with figuring out why a woman at 59 would start to show signs of cognitive decline,
Hmm.
despite having access to healthy food. That's usually an argument that people make about chronic disease is that a lot of these, the chronic disease problems that we're seeing in this country is really, it's about access. People don't have access to healthy food. My mom grew
Yeah.
up in New York City, had access to healthy food, adhered to the guidelines her whole life, was health conscious. Um, and so I just became like really focused on, um, I just knew that there had to be a dietary connection. I knew that it wasn't like genetic Russian roulette because, first of all, like in my family lineage, there's nobody with like any kind of dementia, anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, and I couldn't write it off to her just being old because she wasn't old.
Right.
So 3 years ago, that basically like going from sort of just general filmmaking and hosting, that's when that was a big turning point in my life, at which point I decided that I needed to really uh, focus on this topic and amplify the things that I was learning. So
Yeah.
it's led to the idea for Breadhead, a lot of my sort of advocacy stuff, and I'm thrilled at the I get the sense on a very small scale, but that I'm changing the way people think about food, and so to me that's just a great thing. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell me more about what you saw with your mom with cognitive decline. Like what happened?
Yeah, I mean it. So, my mom has not, even at this point, there's no Alzheimer's diagnosis or anything like that. The reason why a
Hmm.
lot of my messaging has been around Alzheimer's is because Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. There are many other forms of dementia,
Hmm.
mild cognitive impairment, things like that. But what you learn, when you go down the sort of neurodegenerative rabbit hole, is that Alzheimer's shares a lot of overlapping features with other diseases.
Right.
Um, and so I guess at first, it what I started noticing, I mean, there were just basic things that she would just have trouble doing. And my mom is a very, she was a powerful woman. She ran a
Hmm.
business. Her mental faculties were, something that like my mom had, intact, for her life. That she did a lot with them. So, I think you notice that things are
Hmm.
off,
Sure.
and cognitive decline is not a normal aspect of aging for anybody. So that's one of the
Hmm.
myths that I had to sort of, uh, challenge, because I think a lot of people think about these things as like inevitabilities of getting older, but they're not. Um, like I became obsessed not only with what how she might have sort of come down with these sorts of symptoms, but also, which I guess is a really new idea, is the idea of prevention. How
Hmm.
I might live to prevent these sorts of things from ever happening to me. And what I learned is that changes begin in the brain decades before the first symptom.
Right.
So to me, that
Which
was
is freaky.
freaky. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, I mean, that was like a tremendous call to action, like that, that I needed to like really examine this idea and start walking the walk.
Hmm.
Then, so, just as much as like I became obsessed with prevention, have you ever seen that movie Unbreakable with Bruce
Unbreakable,
Willis?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah. So like Elijah Price's whole motivation in that movie, I'm going to get really nerdy right now, but
Hit it.
his whole
Yeah.
motivation
You're in the
behind
right place.
yeah, behind finding the superhero, Bruce Willis, was the
Hmm.
idea of the bell curve, that if somebody could be born to be so misfortunate as him, with this bone disorder, that there had to be
Hmm.
somebody at the other end of the spectrum that not only didn't show any of these frailties, but also was like super strong and super
Hmm.
impervious to physical damage. So when I started reading about prevention and the things that I might do to prevent, cognitive decline, and reading about the studies that they were doing at UCLA, Dr. Dale Bredesen, like reversing cognitive decline in, this pilot study, it got me thinking, well, if I can, reverse, maybe I can optimize. Maybe there are steps that I can take to go in the, to get the pendulum to swing in the other direction,
Right.
where I can not just prevent, but maybe enhance my cognitive abilities. Like you, I'm a multi hyphenate. Like I play music. These are all very cognitively. There's not one part of the brain that's not being used when you're playing a musical instrument. So
Right.
so my cognitive demands are pretty high, and so I started really researching ways that I might optimize that aspect of myself. And so yeah, the research has just been like fascinating.
Yeah. Well, that's so. People who are listening, some of you might know, but my first book was about basically a college project that looked at how music affected the brain, and other arts can allow you to upgrade your own skills and abilities, cognitive function, and also maintain it for a really long time. And I know that that's one of the things that you talk about as well. What is it that you found that interested you about not only optimizing your brain kind of like in the present, but preventing that decline that we usually see, especially in this society, over time? Like
Yeah,
music can help, other things can help. Let's talk about that a little.
like the actual like steps and science behind
Yeah.
prevention. Well, I mean, what you an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. There is no
Hmm.
cure. There is no meaningful treatment for any of these neurodegenerative diseases that we're talking about. They're just band-aids on the disease. And,
Yeah.
the body is a fairly resilient, you know, mechanism, and the brain, is protected by millions of years of evolution behind this blood-brain barrier. So, we have this cognitive reserve, this resilience, and it goes a long way. It takes us decades to see the effect of these our unhealthy ways of eating on our cognitive health. But
Hmm.
once you actually start to see that first symptom and you understand that it's a decades long disease process already set into motion by the time you go to that neurologist's office for the first time, I mean that helps you understand why finding a cure has been so elusive. So
Yeah.
one of the theses, one of the main
Theses.
theses that we're exploring in Breadhead is the idea that um, Alzheimer's shows striking similarities to uh, what is seen in the cells of type 2 diabetics, sort of
Hmm.
insulin resistance that we know is the hallmark of type 2 diabetes. So,
Right.
like, type 2 diabetes you'll be diagnosed if your hemoglobin A1C gets to a certain point. Just under that, you're pre-diabetic, and then if your average 3 month level of glycated hemoglobin is normal, then you're not diabetic. But you can actually show signs of insulin resistance anywhere in your body in the absence of that sort of diagnosis. And it seems that you can, have a diabetic brain without actually being a type 2 diabetic.
Right.
So, in knowing that, and knowing that type 2 diabetes is considered by many to be a lifestyle disease, there are ways that we can live and eat, who knew, to prevent type 2 diabetes and even to manage it and treat it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of how I have taken to living and eating. I eat a low carb diet,
Yeah.
diet that's high in fat, healthy fats.
Awesome.
And I also don't go crazy on the protein. Growing up and being really into sort of bodybuilding, I would just go crazy with the protein. But what few people realize is that protein actually elicits an insulinogenic response in your body as well.
Right.
So I don't think that going nuts with the protein is a very good idea either.
Yeah.
But fat actually, doesn't affect your blood sugar at all. It doesn't elicit an insulin response. And with fats, you can, tilt the scale in terms of an anti-inflammatory state in your body.
Mm-hmm.
You're basically giving your cells the building blocks to create brain cells, to, insulate neurons, to
Right.
create, so fat is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. That's the best.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best.
It's the
And I
absolute
think
best.
And I think like where the science is still trying to figure out, it's like, we all have different genes. Some people, that might have a genetic increased risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, might be over responders to things like saturated fat. I think that we're still kind of figuring out the appropriate, because fat is a nuanced sort of category of macronutrient,
Right.
there's monounsaturated fats, there's polyunsaturated fats, there's saturated fats. So I think that like figuring out the appropriate ratio for your individual genotype, I think that's something that science still has yet to kind of hone in on. We know that saturated fat is not the dietary demon that it once was, but I'm very interested to see where genomics play into those kinds of recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I just want to like touch on how important this is, because a lot of people, I think they go through their lives, myself included, in my early 20s, you get older and people say that you're getting older and these things happen. You might get a degenerative disease. You might get fat. You might start to, your blood work starts to show that you have elevated triglycerides or your cholesterol numbers are off or whatever. Or eventually, you get Alzheimer's. It just happens. You get it. It was in your genes, right? It's not like that, though.
It's not like that.
And I think one of the things that's so exciting about like what you just said, like type 3 diabetes, Alzheimer's kind of starts to look suspiciously like other diseases and disorders that come directly from your lifestyle, directly from the things that you eat, how you live, how you train, if you choose to exercise, your brain states, how stressed you are. All those things are not only important while you're getting these signs of Alzheimer's or any other disease, but way before that. It's like, no, if you want to be looking and feeling good when you're 60, you better start. I mean, you can get away with some youthful folly, I think, and we all stub our toes or whatever, but you better get it in line way before you need to.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, there was a study, I was actually just looking for the link. There was a study that came out this week where they ascertained that people do actually age at different rates than one another. If you have the same chronological age with somebody, with one of your peers, you actually, like, in measuring your biomarkers and comparing them against other people in your peer group, you may actually be aging faster or slower than somebody with the same exact age. And that aging process is reflected in your physical appearance.
Right.
So, I mean, the idea
it's
that
wacky going to my Dartmouth reunion, especially just like 5 years. The guys who went to Wall Street compared to almost everyone else. Holy smokes. It's like, a lot of people in their 20s, including me, when I was doing the wrong thing, you look like you're in your 30s, 40s, like you're middle-aged as soon as you're out of college. And it seems like that is creeping down into, obesity in your teens or even younger. And those things really, really accelerate aging.
Yeah.
And it's like this energy suck.
Yeah.
It's like, it reminds me of the Dark Crystal, right? When
Yeah.
like a bad lifestyle is sucking your life essence.
Yeah, you're actually making yourself age faster. essentially by living an unhealthy lifestyle. And I'm obsessed with figuring out what this unhealthy lifestyle really is, because that's that term means nothing. But the most empowering thing about that study is that these are all the biomarkers that they measured that were, really strongly correlated with, the appearance of physical aging are all, things that fall within your control. Your lipid profile, markers of genetic aging, your telomeres. Telomeres are, they're a biomarker for cellular aging that you can actually control with, vitamin D, for example. Meditation,
Right.
Meditation has been associated with having longer telomeres. Telomeres are like the shoelace tips at the end of your chromosomes that protect their integrity, and they shorten with age. So
With misuse, right?
yeah, but even like glycation, like I think that the blood sugar pandemic, I think, is a major source of aging that we can control, like with every choice that we make at the kitchen table,
So why is it that, you think that getting millennials or 30 somethings interested in this now is so important?
Because I think that this is the time at which we can really make a difference in our cognitive health. Right now there's an estimated 5.5 million people in the United States suffering from Alzheimer's disease. And again, Alzheimer's is not the only form of dementia. It's simply the most common. But, there's a kind of dementia called vascular dementia, which it's the second most common way. It's very heavily dictated by your vascular health, cardiovascular health. And the number of affected people with Alzheimer's is set to triple by the year 2050. So that means, that there are currently 10 million people alive today in this country that don't have signs of cognitive decline that will over the next 10 years or over the next, 35 years. So that window, that 35-year window, to me, is an incredible opportunity to change our cognitive destiny. And,
So you said that you have never really been overweight. You haven't really had problems. What have you changed, though, based upon what you've learned?
Question. So I used to believe that the more whole grains you ate, the healthier. And again, I've never, I would eat them. My body fat has always sort of hovered around 14%. I've never been one of those guys to obsess with getting it lower than that. Although I've been curious to see if, the abs might emerge. But I used to think that eating a huge bowl of brown rice with my Thai food. For example, I love Thai food. Obsessed with I'm a huge Thai food junkie. Lived in LA for 10 years. LA has the best Thai food on the planet.
We stayed in Thai Town not too long ago.
Yeah,
Definitely had some cheating going on there. It was great.
Yeah, so brown rice I used to think was completely benign for your health, if not additive to your health, And, I would start every morning with, eggs and whole wheat bread, for example. What I realized is that what I'm doing in those moments is inundating my system with blood sugar, which, has a number of negative effects on the body. I mean, for one, you're increasing the rate at which you undergo this process called glycation. Glycation is simply a function of glucose exposure over time. So whether you've consumed a Diet Coke or a Coke rather, that shoots your blood sugar through the roof and then drops it and then you feel miserable, or, a huge bowl of quinoa that keeps your blood sugar maybe elevated less intensely, but over a longer period of time, the same process is happening. Obviously quinoa is, I'm not saying that Coke and quinoa are comparable in any sense.
Well,
but
it's a good point though, because brown rice, you sit down, or especially white rice, things like that you can overeat health foods for sure, especially carbs.
Yeah, and I think it's fine to have a little bit, but the idea that we can just eat copious amounts of these grains, we're told 7 to 11 servings per day is what we need for a healthful diet because they fuel the human body like gasoline to a car. I think that
it's nonsense.
Yeah, that's an absurd notion, especially when you consider that the human body, that's such an oversimplified way of thinking about how the body fuels itself. The body is like the most advanced Prius in the universe. Toyota wishes it had this technology, right? Like your body can create glucose from protein, gluconeogenesis. Your body can tap into its fat stores, ketones. Ketones are an incredibly clean burning fuel source for your brain cells, and other cells, throughout your body.
Running on those puppies right now.
Yeah.
Pretty much every interview day. I have 8 interviews today. I run on pure fat the whole time, and it's just it's awesome. You get a totally different brain state. You can feel it, and so many people are used to that up and down, starting in the morning and then keeps going forever of blood sugar, insulin, that terrible cycle that not only kind of like saps your energy in the moment, but also does some serious metabolic damage and maybe damage to your brain, it looks like, as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've found that even below the level of blood sugar at which you'd be diagnosed a type 2 diabetic, even mild elevations of blood sugar correlate directly with shrinkage of the memory center of the brain and impaired cognitive function among healthy people. So I think that if I can accomplish one thing, it's to get people to rethink. It's to get people to actually think about their blood sugar, not even rethink, to think about blood sugar in the way that people already think about blood pressure. People have this sense that, that you need a certain level of blood pressure to lay down, sit up, work out. But beyond that, everybody knows generally that the lower it is, the better.
Yeah.
Right?
I got a glucose meter years ago and just started like seeing what different foods did to me, or what fasting did to me, or even what exercise did to my blood sugar. And it's really tempting for people to be obsessed with cholesterol or blood pressure because that's what we're kind of told. But when you start to track your own blood sugar, and I think a lot of people are just like, well, I don't need to do that because I'm not diabetic. If you do it, you'd be like, oh, I'm almost diabetic, And that's even what I saw in myself when I, was testing the different foods for the glycemic index. It's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
You might feel a bad meal or a high glycemic food source or sugar or whatever. You might feel it a little bit. But when you actually see it on a graph, when you look at the numbers of what it does to your body, you're like, wow, that just doubled my blood sugar in like 15 minutes. That's probably not a good long-term plan.
It's not a good long-term plan. And, I recently posted a video on my YouTube channel about like blood sugar hacks that you can use after if you find yourself in a situation where you've just like overdone it with the carbs. You can actually, there are really meaningful things that you can do to lower your blood sugar like fast in real time. And I think this is important because even short-term blood sugar spikes, like even that one, acute, surge in your blood sugar can have detrimental effects, can have, long-lasting effects. In fact, there was one study where they exposed mice to a really acute short-term sugar blast that actually led to epigenetic changes that increased their risk for vascular damage that persisted even when their blood sugar went back down to normal. So I think that like keeping blood sugar in check, this is like major. We need to like shift the paranoia and fear that has permeated this nation surrounding fat for the past couple of decades. I mean, I think a little bit of that might be useful in getting people to reconsider their blood sugar. And,
Just reshift your paranoia to something. Exactly. No, it's so true though. I'm curious, what were the things that you found to regulate blood sugar that just spiked?
Vinegar. It's funny. My grandma growing up would always tell me that vinegar was one of the best things that you could consume. And she didn't have any of the science to back it up, obviously. Yeah. She just had a sense, the same way that like Tibetan monks, have for eons been touting the benefits of meditation, and science is now starting to figure out why meditation is so good for us. So vinegar. There was a study, you take a shot of vinegar with, a high carb meal. In the study, they used white bread, I believe. And it drastically reduced their postprandial hyperglycemic effect. Yeah. Their postprandial hyperglycemia. Postprandial means like after eating, and hyperglycemia means like a high blood sugar effect.
Right.
Cinnamon has been studied for its immediate blood sugar reducing powers. There was a study in which people were fed rice pudding with a pretty high amount of cinnamon, but you can get cinnamon in supplemental form. It's important to look for Ceylon cinnamon. Cinnamon cassia, which is like the common household spice cinnamon, tends to have this coumarin compound, which can be toxic. But then even just like going for a walk, say you don't have vinegar or cinnamon, you can just go for a walk, and just walking after a meal drastically reduces your post-meal blood sugar. So I think these are all really empowering things to keep in your back pocket because,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, we're human. And, if we find ourselves in a situation where we are at, you know, for me, I have a sweet tooth. I don't give
Hmm.
into it, but I was once at a birthday party and there was just like, it was one of those like super opulent, decadent LA birthday celebrity things. And I just remember there being like miles of red velvet cake, which I think is like the most delicious thing on the planet. I don't eat it,
It is.
but at that party, I had some and I just felt miserable afterwards. But
Right.
so, again, we're human. We're going to slip and it's fine. It's not about perfection. It's about doing the best we can. And I think
Hmm.
that having, I guess, tips like this in your back pocket can help.
Yeah, for sure. And I just read one recently too about the effect of timing your carbs. I'm really interested in that because I do it every day, and I always want to kind of like optimize it or whatever. But if you eat bread the way that people typically do, you go to a restaurant, they put out this. Usually it's terrible bread, you know, but every once in a while, I'll indulge if it's really good stuff from a place that's proud of what they're putting out there. I might try a little bit of it. But if you eat the bread before you eat your meal, it basically skyrockets your blood sugar as much as pure sugar does, or even more so in some cases. Although if you save the starches and the things that otherwise would be high glycemic until after the meal, after you have fiber in your belly, after you have real food in your system, it starts to slow down that process. And so it's even things that are high glycemic, have like half the effect that they would otherwise if you ate them on an empty stomach. So it's so important to kind of bring these things out there because like eating bread at the beginning of a meal as opposed to, a little bit of starch during it really isn't deprivation. You know what I mean? It's just like a slight little hack that
Yeah.
can totally change
That study
the
came out
outcomes,
recently,
right?
right? That you're talking about?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. I remember reading that. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And so I love seeing things like that pop up because you don't necessarily feel your blood pressure, but you do feel your blood sugar. And we need to get more in touch with that. And that's why I think it's so important that you're working on this film. We're just about out of time, but before we go, I just want to ask you, like, what are some things that surprised you about what you've learned in the research that you've done so far?
Man, what have I, there's so much. I mean, from the
Yeah.
health standpoint, I learned just how much control you do have over your cognitive health.
Hmm.
You know, Neurology is a field that's long been characterized by this sort of diagnose and adios mentality. So I think that like really spreading the empowering message of, the fact that your brain health really is, within your control.
Yeah.
I've also like gotten a taste of the politics of like health and and
Oh
medicine and
boy.
like the pharmaceutical hunt for an Alzheimer's cure, and that
Hmm.
sort of agenda can sometimes stand at odds with the idea of promoting the idea of prevention via
Hmm.
natural means.
Right.
The recent like Wall Street Journal article that mentioned my film, and it was about how we need to continue to promote that a cure needs to be found. That money needs to continue to be funneled into research and things like that. That coconut oil is not the answer.
Hmm.
I would disagree with the latter, notion. I think, obviously coconut oil, it's a replete in a kind of fat called a medium chain triglyceride. There's ample evidence that can help
Hmm.
people
Yeah.
with mild cognitive impairment and stuff like that. So I think it's easy to write off natural things like that as being pseudoscientific, but like you can't solve a problem with the same mindset that created it.
Right.
So for me, it's about starting early. It's about like getting this message out to young people. Like being
Hmm.
on your podcast. Like it's exposing these ideas to an audience that might not have thought about their cognitive health beforehand. Or might
Hmm.
not have made that association between blood sugar and brain health.
Yeah. Oh, sugar's making me dumb.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to perform better mentally?
Yeah. Right.
Like millennials, we've invested more in human capital than any previous generation. We're just like inundated with data constantly. Attention is the
Hmm.
new limited resource. So if you can eat in
Right.
a way that makes you better able to sort of handle the mental tasks that are thrown at you day in and day out, why wouldn't you? You know, so
Yeah. Right. Well, this is awesome. So we're just about out of time. Before we go, why don't you tell Max people where they can find you, and also a little bit about your movie?
Cool. Yeah, so definitely connect with me on Twitter at Max Lugavere. Also on Facebook, facebook.com/Max Lugavere. I'm on YouTube. I'm all over the place. So please connect, say hi. Join the Breadhead mailing list at breadheadmovie.com. We're currently working on Breadhead. We're in production now. I'm going to be on the road for the next month shooting. I'm super excited.
Cool.
Film, it's really the first ever millennial-focused film that looks at the impact of diet and lifestyle on brain health. It's gonna use my story as a means of, getting to talk about this really fascinating science that's going on in labs today that can really help you take back your brain health. And, whether it's about prevention or whether somebody who's been affected, I think that this is the most important topic there is. I can't, underscore that enough. And so, so I'm looking forward to connecting with all of your fans and continuing to spread this message.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on this show. I think it's, obviously you're talking about things that are close to my heart, and I think not really talked about enough, especially not these days. So thanks for fighting the good fight. We need more Maxes in the world.
Thanks, Abel. We need more of you.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, come to Nashville. We'll jam.
Hell yeah.
We'll sing about it.
I'm down.
All right, man. Thanks so much. We'll chat soon.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Woo! Hey, this is Abel James from Fat Burning Man, and if you liked this video today, please take a quick second to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Now, I have a quick question for you. Do you want to learn how to get fit and lose fat by exercising less? Get the step-by-step strategies for how to do that right now for free. All you have to do is subscribe to this channel right now, then click the link below to fatburningman.com. Enter your best email to sign up for my newsletter, and I'll send you a quick start guide to burning fat right now and some ridiculously good recipes as a special thanks. Once again, just go to fatburningman.com right now and enter your best email to get your free fat burning download straight to your inbox. Talk to you soon.
There's another problem with paleo, and this harkens back to the Atkins days and why so many of the low-carb crowd are holding on to pounds they don't want to. I felt this when I lost my first 50 pounds.